We are recording and we are live. Whenever you're ready, sir.
Excellent. We'll wait till exactly 4 o'clock. Good afternoon, everyone. The time is now 4 p.m. I call the May 27th, 2021 council meeting to order. The following options are available to access this meeting. You may access or participate in the meeting using the Zoom application on a smart device or a PC via the web at zoom.us and clicking on Join a Meeting in the upper right hand of the page. The web ID number this evening is 978-8786-9794. Anyone wanting to participate via telephone only may call one of the following numbers. Non-toll-free numbers. While most mobile phone carriers do not place an extra charge on customers for toll calls, it is up to you to check with your carrier concerning potential charges you would be responsible for. The first number, and again, all this information is on our website. The first number this evening is 1-646-558-8656. The next number is 1-301-715-8592. The next number is 1-312-626-6799. The next number is 1-669-900-9128. The next number is 1-253-215-8782. The next number is 1-346-248-7799. Toll-free numbers from anywhere in the U.S. The first number you can try this evening is 1-877-853-5247. The next number is 1-888-788-0099. The next number is 1-833-548-0276. The next number is 1-833-548-0282. Please note if you're experiencing trouble connecting via the toll-free number, please try the next number on the list. You will then need to punch in the web ID, which again is 978-8786-9794 on the touchtone keypad. While everyone joining the meeting will be muted, if at the appropriate time during the proceedings you wish to ask a question, you may, if using a smartphone or a PC, click on Raise Hand icon. The meeting moderator will then ask the participant having raised their hand to be unmuted. After the question, answer, and any further discussion, the participant will be muted again and will need to click on Raise Hand icon or punch in *9 to ask another question. If phoning in, punch *9 on the touchtone keypad. The moderator will indicate when it is your turn to comment or ask a question. At this time, I'm going to ask the city clerk to please call the roll.
Mr. McAllister,
Here.
Mr. Foley,
Here.
Mr. Gebhardt,
Here.
Mr. Howe,
Here.
Mr. Lattiser,
Here.
Mr. McElroy,
Yeah.
Mr. Ricks,
Here.
Mr. Sinapi,
Here.
Ms. Travis.
Here.
9 present.
Thank you. At this time, I'm going to ask Ward 9 Councilman Vinnie Gebhardt to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Mr. Howe,
Here.
Mr. Lattiser,
Here.
Mr. McElroy,
Yeah.
Mr. Ricks,
Here.
Mr. Sinapi,
Here.
Ms. Travis.
Here.
9 present.
Thank you. At this time, I'm going to ask Ward 9 Councilman Vinnie Gebhardt to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
Howe,
Here.
and to
Mr.
the republic
Lattiser,
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilman. Okay, next up on the agenda is general communications. Is there any members of the council that have anything for general communications? Okay, Councilwoman Travis.
Yes, I just want to remind them on Monday, we're doing the wreath laying at the Veterans Memorial Park at near Veterans Middle School at 10 o'clock. And I'd like to see everybody there if possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Anything else for general communications? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to, first up on the agenda is PCR 75-21, resolution relative to transfers, supplemental appropriations, and emergency appropriations. So this is the budget that we are going to discuss at this time. First off, I just want to go a little procedural here. We have some amendments from the administration that we want to clear. They want to clear up a couple of numbers that were off on their original submission. We have them here to speak on these after we make the motion and get a second. It does not change the bottom line of the budget. So they're just moving things around, correcting a couple of mistakes. So we will move that. After we take that amendment up, we will open it up to members of the council. I'm going to ask that when you call on, you start with, I would like to make an amendment, and you talk about what the amendment is. So, line item 444, I would like to change it X amount. Then we will pause. You will wait to get a second. Once you get a second, then you will explain why you would like to make that amendment. Discussion. Then we will vote on that amendment. Then we will go back to that person who has the floor. They will make the second amendment and just like that. So each time you will make the amendment first, you will get a second. Then the original sponsor will explain their reasoning for making that proposal. We will vote on each one individually. Then at the end, after every council person has had an opportunity to make amendments, we will take a pause, a recess. The administration will go crunch the numbers. They will get us the final, what that version of the tax rate will be. They will come back. They will let us know. We will, again, open it up, and we will move on from there. So that is the plan this evening. But first off, we would like to, I'm going to call on Chairman Howe to make the amendments on behalf of the administration. He will read the amendments first. We will get a second. Then we'll open it up for discussion, if we get a second, of course. Councilman Howe.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move favorable actions on the amendments.
Okay, if you could just read the amendments first, then we'll get a second, and then we'll do it.
Okay, I'm sorry, I did it backwards. Thank you. Okay, account number, amendment number 1 is account number from account 43101, library salaries. The proposed budget is $2,034,743. The amendment is a reduction of $20,000 to the adjusted budget of $2,014,743, an adjustment of decrease of $20,000. Amendment number 2 is account number 43355, library special programs. Proposed budget was $23,000. The amendment is $20,000 to adjust the budget to $43,000, an increase of $20,000. Amendment proposed number 3 is from account 16360, legislative professional services. The proposal was $218,544. The requested amendment is a reduction of $50,000 to $168,544. Amendment number 4 is account 34360, EMA professional services. The proposed budget was $50,000. The adjustment would be a reduction of $50,000 to the new budget of 0. Item number 5, 35360, fire professional services. The proposed budget was $60,000. The proposed reduction of $60,000 to the adjusted budget of 0. Item number 6 is 35116, fire unused sick. The proposed budget was $32,272 to an amendment of increase of $280,000 to bring the budget to increase $280,000 to the new budget number of $312,272. And the final amendment, number 7, is account number 75162, fire healthcare. The proposed budget was $4,181,565 with an amendment of reduction of $120,000 to bring the new adjusted total to $4,061,565. That is the amendments proposed, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. So we're going to bundle those into one motion. So do we have, he moved those as one as favorable. Do we have a second? Second by Councilman Foley, Councilman McElroy. Okay. Are there any discussions on the amendments put forward by the administration? We do have the administration here as well to answer any questions. Again, this is just to kind of clean up the balance. There is no change to the overall number of the budget. So as you see, they took $20,000 from one line item and put $20,000 into another line item. So the bottom line of the budget number is still $333,058,597. There has been no change to the overall budget line from these amendments.
Mr. President, this is the finance director. We felt that a number was read wrong on the EMA professional services. Could Mr. Howe read off those numbers again, Mr.?
With your permission, Mr. President?
Yep, go right ahead.
Thank you. That would be amendment number 4, account number 3460, EMA professional services. The proposed budget was $50,000. The requested amendment was a reduction of $50,000 to bring the adjusted budget to 0 for that account.
Yeah, I think,
Councilman Howe, that started at $100,000.
Okay,
So it will be 50.
okay, the number we have is 50,000. That was the document we were given.
Yeah.
So you're saying that line item started at 100,000 and you're looking the same, still looking to reduce it by 50,000, but the adjusted budget will now be 50,000.
correct.
So my ask would be, would I need to just call it as it was announced, or do I have to request an amendment to the amendment? So I can just.
No, I think we just cleaned it up here. Yeah.
Okay. So I'll read it now as it was requested by the administration. For amendment number 4, 34360, that's the account, EMA professional services. So the proposed budget was 100,000. The requested amendment is a reduction of 50,000 for an adjusted budget of 50,000.
Correct, Councilman. I apologize for that typo.
Quite all right.
No
Thank you.
problem. Do we have any, while we have the administration here, would you like to make any more comments on the proposed amendment before we open it up for questions?
Peter? Well, just running through them, you recall during the public hearing on the library, it was noted that the deputy director was over budgeted. It was based upon a previous year's salary. When the budget first came out, the council president noticed that we'd made a mistake in professional services for the city council budget. That's been corrected. The big one was fire unused sick. There'd been a number left out, and that's why we've increased it $280,000. And we've identified, the other three are resources that we've identified to make up the net differential, which was in fire healthcare, and we heard testimony about when the new recruits would be going on. Professional services, the chief indicated they no longer needed that money. And then the EMA professional services, that's really a reimbursable item, and they believe that $50,000 would be sufficient.
Thank you, Director. Councilman Ricks.
Thank you. So I suppose a point of concern there is if $100,000 was originally budgeted to the EMA, I'm not certain what sort of professional services the EMA was expected to receive, and if the difference between the $100,000 and $50,000 may make an impact this coming year.
Well, this amount, 95% of this amount will be reimbursed. What it is, we've had a consultant on board that has helped us with the FEMA reimbursements. That's to pay this consultant, but almost all of those costs are reimbursed by FEMA. The mayor spoke with the assistant chief yesterday. He was comfortable that this number was adequate for what they were going to have to do.
Thank you. And then similarly, I had, I suppose, the same concern as to line item 75-162, the $120,000 there. I'm not sure if anything has changed since the other night in terms of, at that point, healthcare fire had been budgeted for $4,181,000, well, $565, but basically that 4.18 million. And I'm not sure if anything has actually changed in terms of how much we would actually be expecting to spend on that line item in this coming fiscal year.
The testimony that we had from the chief and the assistant chief related, first of all, the timing of people going into the fire academy. And we now believe that's going to be a little bit later than what we had estimated for purposes of proposing the budget. The second part of it is there will be people under 26 years old who will not take the health insurance. And that had not been, we've been assuming that everyone was going to be a participant. And the third thing is we assumed a pretty high per unit cost for health insurance of around $20,000 a year, when in fact, with the younger workforce, a lot of those people will be unmarried and only be adopting a single plan. So we're comfortable in dealing with the fire department that we've budgeted sufficient funds to cover the health insurance for the new firefighters.
Thank you. I suppose that raises one last question, is if part of the logic in reducing the number for the fire department healthcare is that the new recruits may be coming on later. That may have an impact on the total overtime because as discussed the other night, the late arrival of, or perhaps not late arrival, maybe late is not the most precise word here, but the new recruits coming on 9 months into the fiscal year, that certainly has an impact relative to overtime, that if they were to come in earlier in the fiscal year, then overtime would not be quite as high. Are we concerned that the overtime, and for this, I'm looking at, I suppose, line items 35-110 and 35-111 may, as a result of the later than expected arrival, increase from their current numbers?
I thought that the deputy chief was pretty comfortable with those numbers. He was the one that was doing most of the testimony on the timing of getting everyone on board, and he seemed comfortable with the overtime amount that he had budgeted, and they came up with that number.
I appreciate the
Whereas we
explanation.
came up with health insurance, and I think their testimony gave us some indication that on the health insurance part of it, the cost would not be as initially budgeted.
I appreciate the explanation. I do continue to have some concerns on those items, but I do appreciate the explanation, and I'll yield the floor.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Lattiser.
Thank you, Mr. President. So my question on this particular item is on 43,355, which is special programs. Why is there a need to increase that by 20,000?
Councilman, you were the one that identified that the deputy chief position had been over budgeted. So we wanted to correct that. And the fact of the matter is, we're concerned about maintenance of effort issues regarding to the library. So we did not want to reduce the total city appropriation to the library.
Peter, are you saying that we have a maintenance of effort requirement for the library as we do for the school department?
Absolutely.
Well, that's a new one on me. What other
They've been
departments do
granted
we? What other departments?
1 year to the next.
What's that?
From 1 year to the next, you're required to have the same appropriation. There have been they have granted waivers because some libraries were not operating at all during the pandemic. But in general, the state law is 100% maintenance requirement.
Okay. And could you just review the fire professional services again, the reduction of 60,000?
I mean, this was something that the chief and the deputy chief communicated with us that they didn't need any longer. Linda, you have better recollection than me as the.
I can chime in that discussion. Councilman Lattiser, Assistant Chief Umbenauer indicated that those professional services were monies that were utilized to retain a firm to seek FEMA reimbursement during the pandemic. And obviously those services won't be required to the extent that they were, going forward, given where we are with COVID. That was reimbursable as well, but there was a line item in the budget that in anticipation of having to utilize those services should the pandemics continue longer than what we had expected.
Were there any monies used in that line item in this current year?
At the time of the printing of the budget, it was $10,000.
And that was budgeted for the same 60,000?
Correct.
Okay, so the question to the council president, before we do any final votes on this, are we going to be allowed to ask questions of the finance director or anyone else for that matter?
Yeah, like we've been doing. Yeah, the mayor, the finance director, Mr. Kaiser, Lynn, they're available.
because I have other questions that don't necessarily pertain to these respective items, but they do pertain to this overall budget. So
Yes, we're going amendment by amendment. So we this was seconded. So we'll move on this, then we will open it up and you can speak on whatever one you would like.
my questions, maybe I'm not making myself clear. My questions are more in the interest of being able to get a clearer understanding of where we are in the overall budget and what the projections are going forward in this new budget. So it's not necessarily about, line item 23-102. It's just these general questions so I can get some answers to the things that I have in my mind. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, I understand. No, I was advised that we go amendment by amendment because we will vote on the end at a whole after all the amendments are done. So everyone will have an opportunity to speak on any topic in the budget. And then at the end, we have to vote as a whole. So you can also ask questions as a whole as it's shaped.
Okay, so once we go individual line item.
Mr. President, I'm sorry to interrupt. Lynn Praj has something to add right here.
I have a question for your solicitor, which is unusual. In my time with this particular meeting, there's no Q&A session because the budget hearings are done.
Correct. He's talking about questions from council members to the administration.
We understand
All right,
you want to ask additional questions on the whole entire budget.
I was just concerned you were getting into questions about line item by line item again.
No. I'm speaking about just questions that I have regarding the budget in general, as opposed to a particular line item. So as long as I know at the end of our review of each individual line item and proposed changes, before we vote on the formal or the complete proposed budget, that I or any of my colleagues on the council will have an opportunity to ask general questions, which will help us in making our decisions on some of these line item ups or downs.
That's the same thing. That's the same thing, Councilman. We presented the budget with all the directors here and you questioned it then. And the process now is amendments.
Mr. Conley, we'll have you weigh in here, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. So the process at this stage is that the council and each member of the council, as you indicated, Mr. President, will be allowed to make a motion to amend the budget. That motion requires a second in order to bring it to the floor. If there is no second to the motion, then it's not before the council and it's not subject to discussion. The process will proceed that way. At the conclusion of that process, if any councilor wants to make a statement as to why they're supporting the budget or why they're not supporting the budget for their final vote, they certainly have the ability to do that. But because the motion to pass the budget is on the floor. But that is the process for the council tonight. It's not a discursive hearing on the budget any longer. So for the sake of completeness and at the risk of being repetitive, the process before the council tonight is that each council have the opportunity to make a motion to amend. For a discussion of that motion to take place, it requires a second. That brings it before the floor. At the conclusion of the amendment process, as you pointed out, Mr. President, the council will be required to vote on the budget as a whole. At that time, each member of the council will have the opportunity to make whatever comments they have in support of the budget or against the budget or critical of sections of the budget. But at that time, each council will be required to vote for or against the budget as a whole. And that's how the hearing under the rules will proceed this evening. I hope that is responsive to the question.
Thank you.
Thank you,
With that
Mr.
said,
Gottlieb.
Mr. President, the questions I have on those particular items that Chairman Howe asked have been answered.
Thank you. Any other questions for members of the council who haven't got a chance to speak yet? Councilman Ricks.
Thank you. One last follow-up. This is actually a follow-up on a point that Councilman Lattiser raised. As to the maintenance of effort on the library, it's my understanding that because there is a new position that is being added, the deputy director position. Let's see. In fact, let me make sure that I correctly have this in front of me. The 2021 revised budget was a total of $2,881,000 and change, and the proposed 2022 budget is $2,981,000 and change. It appears that the total budget, the proposed, is over 100, or rather is approximately $100,000 greater than the previous budget. So I believe that we would satisfy that maintenance of effort requirement in large part because of the addition of the new position. And this is to say that I am not opposed to the additional funding of the $23,000 more than was previously presented to us for the special programs budget. I think that the library could certainly put that to excellent use, but I wanted to make sure to have clarification on that point as to whether we on the council may have the ability to decide that where that $23,000 may go, whether we have that ability or whether, because this new position is being added, if we may not have that ability based on the interpretation of the maintenance of effort.
City Hall, you're muted.
The maintenance of effort problem could become a problem in 22, but the origins of that are actually 19 to 20, 20 to 21, where we've had to get a waiver with promises to fully fund the library.
Thank you. I do see that those years in 2019 and 2020, the actual numbers as listed in the packet, the 2019 actual is listed as $2,884,000 and change. 2020 actual is listed as $2,811,000 and change. So I can see how that drop off of the approximately $73,000 there, I could see how that could be an issue. However, the $23,000 would still be, if dropped from the 2022 proposed budget of the $2,981,000 and change, would still leave us above the 2019 actual of the $2,884,000. So I suppose that I could see how there may be some complications there with the maintenance of effort. I'm not familiar with this specific waiver, but you know, I don't think that it's necessary for me to, you know, delve into that further at this time, because I would support the $23,000 additional into the special programs budget as recommended by the administration. So I think that that satisfies my questions. And I do intend to vote favorably on the omnibus set of those 7 amendments as requested by the administration at this time, just mainly for the purpose of making sure that we have those various items cleaned up, not because I necessarily support each and every one of those particular changes necessarily as they are, but because I do think that the omnibus approach would be the cleanest way to proceed at this time.
Thank you, Councilman. Any additional questions? The clerk will call the roll in favorable action.
Mr. McAllister,
Yes.
Mr. Foley,
Yes.
Mr. Gephardt,
Yes.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser,
Yes.
Mr. McElroy,
Yes.
Mr. Ricks,
Yes.
Mr. Sinapi,
Yes.
Ms. Travis,
yes,
9 yes.
Thank you. The amendment passes. Okay, at this time, we're going to, I'm going to open it up to members of the council who would like to make amendments. Again, you will say the amendment first, how much up or down, and then we will wait to get you a second. Then we will go back to you and you will explain your thought process. And does the clerk have a question?
I do, sorry. Can you just make sure everybody repeats the line item twice, just so that I get the right line item? Please.
Will do.
Thank
We'll
you.
go nice and slow. Yep.
Thank you. I'm not too slow.
All right, at this time, are there members of council that would like to make an amendment to the budget? Councilman Ricks.
Thank you. So my first amendment, and I would certainly allow any other council members to jump in before I go and make any second amendment, relates to line 75-196. That's 75-196. For reference, this is the, this is the Opeb funding on page 52, specifically listed as Opeb trust funding, which is currently set at $250,000. My amendment would be to increase that line item by $750,000 to a total of $1 million.
Thank you, Councilman. Do we have a second to that motion?
I'll second it for discussion.
Second by Councilman Lattiser. Councilman Ricks.
Thank you. As we all know, OPEB is a critical issue that the city faces in the long term. And more, it's not even becoming so much of a long-term issue. Well, it remains certainly a long-term issue, but more and more, it's also becoming a short-term issue with the payments that the city is making for its post-employment healthcare benefits to retirees increasing every single year. Part of that is that, in general, our healthcare costs do tend to increase year over year. This coming year, is a bit of an exception to that trend, but we all know that healthcare, generally speaking, is getting more expensive, not less. And we now have more retirees than active workers, and that ratio is also increasing. So, as we heard about the other night, our total healthcare costs that we are paying for retirees is well over $30 million per year, of which the city, or rather the total liability, is growing by over $30 million per year, of which the city is paying as we go, which ends up paying about 1/3 of that out of the operating budget, with the remainder, which is now approaching $400 million as an unfunded liability, growing by over $20 million per year. This year, as we know, this coming fiscal year, the city intends to hire new firefighters, which the new hires would be contributing to the OPEB trust, And I commend the administration for opening an OPEB trust fund. Certainly, I think that $250,000, as they had proposed, is a good step. It's a step in the right direction. It's unfortunately, whether it's $250,000 or $1 million, it's not near the amount that we need to be making to truly get serious about this. However, realistically, we are not able to put in an 8-figure amount of money into this line item. This is something that, in order to address this in the long term, we're going to have to take a multi-year approach. We're going to have to work with all interest holders here, find compromises, because as the actuaries have told us, we are, quote, beyond the point of no return. So if everything is left exactly as it is, and even if we were to have maximum tax increases every single year and put, excuse me, and a maximum tax increase every single year, which would be devastating, and we were to take every single penny of that and put it into the Opeb funding year after year, we would still never catch up to the current unfunded liability. That's scary. That's scary stuff. And I see it as essential. It's critical that we do what we can to make sure that we are honoring our contracts, our guarantees to our employees who are now retired. The city, whether we like it or not, has made these guarantees for lifetime health care. That is, the plans that the employees, the active employees, are being offered extend that same to the retirees up until the retiree turns 65. And this is, of course, I'm speaking in broad strokes here because this is the budget hearing. This is not a meeting dedicated to this specific topic. But for those employees who have been guaranteed those benefits, it is a guarantee, a promise that the city made. And I want to make sure that we are doing what we can, that the city is honoring those commitments. While $250,000 is certainly a step in the right direction, and it's my understanding that that would be the amount that's needed to open this type of account, which we certainly now need, now that we are anticipating that we will have these new hires who will be contributing at 2% of their pay into these accounts per the fire contract that was passed a couple of years ago. I think that a contribution of $1 million will really make a statement. It is in itself far more significant toward starting to fund this problem than a contribution of $250,000. But more than just the raw amount, the reason that I propose, the main reason that I propose an amount of $1 million is to make a statement that we as a city council and as a city are serious about addressing this issue, making sure that we are honoring our commitments to the retirees, and that this is something where the city is going to step up and come to the table. And then in order to solve this problem, we are going to work in good faith with everyone involved here to make sure that the city is able to honor its commitments, come up with a plan. And the city, as we've heard from the actuaries, the city, if things are going down the same track as they are currently, we're not going to be able to do this alone. So making a statement that we're going to step up, and hopefully the other folks who have interest in this, we want them to step up as well. We're going to solve this problem. We're only going to solve it by working together. And so I think that this statement is a big first step towards that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Ricks. On this amendment to Councilman Sinapi.
I just have both a suggestion and a question. For anyone who presents an amendment, if possible, please say where you expect the money to come from if you're increasing an item, because until that happens, I have no idea whether or not I can even consider supporting something. And in fact, if possible, the best thing in my mind, and this might not actually be a good idea, so feel free to take this how you will, would be to move to amend where you're getting the money from first, if possible. Because then you can say, I want to amend this one to fund XYZ, because obviously if that doesn't work, you need to find something else in order to fund that. And then if the answer is simply, I want to raise taxes or whatever, fine, but you got to please tell us. So then through the council president to Councilman Ricks, where do you intend for the money to come from for the purposes of your amendment?
Yeah. Councilman Ricks.
Thank you, Council President. So, and this goes to a larger point as well. I had alluded to it a bit earlier in the hearings when I was discussing various other line items in the firefighters budget, when I had expressed that I feel that certain other line items are underfunded compared to what I think we are more reasonably looking at. And to some of these items, as I had mentioned before, some items where I understand that as a policy, we do not fund on speculation, but when a couple of line items are adding up to close to or about $1 million for this current fiscal year, then I think that we can reasonably expect a similar number for the coming fiscal year as well. And as I've also expressed, I think that the budget, the projection for the firefighter overtime in the proposed budget is low. We have seen this before where the fire department routinely exceeds. I don't think that there's been a year that I've been on the city council that the fire department has not exceeded its overtime. This is not to say that that should be happening, but the fact of the matter is that when that budget is exceeded, the firefighters are going to get paid for the hours that they work. That's how it should be. The contract should be followed, the contract that we have in place. And so when we are going about budgeting, I think that it is helpful to recognize that we could budget firefighter overtime much lower, but that's not going to change the reality that the overtime is what it is, so to speak. There are some measures that can be taken and should be taken to address that. But at the end of the day, when that overtime is worked, it's going to cost what it's going to cost.
Councilman, we just want to stay on track. So we just want to say, if we're going to add $1 million here, which line items would you take? And then we can, if someone has questions on that. But that's what's before us at this time is the question that was asked was, where would the $1 million come from?
Thank you. I'm sorry about that. I'll speed it along. So at the end of this, where I'm going with this is that necessarily to balance the budget. And for that matter, I would also suggest that the structural deficit currently proposed of 1.75 million is also quite high. What I am suggesting here is that it would be necessary to raise taxes to accomplish this.
Thank you. Councilman Sinapi, you still have the floor.
So just to be clear, because as the council president said, that was a long answer. The basis or the source would be simply raising taxes, right?
End of the day, yes. I would prefer to see the taxes raised rather than a structural deficit be widened, which would ultimately create a greater tax burden and put residents in a worse position in the future. My general thinking is that smaller tax increases over time are preferable to a shocking tax increase later on, or the issues that would come with putting the city in a position where we don't have money to fund essential programs.
Thank you. Councilman Sinapi?
All right, so then just as a general comment on the proposal, one of my main concerns is the fact that we have a revaluation year coming up. And last time that happened, people actually thought we raised taxes, even though we didn't, because they got hit so hard. And with the housing bubble being what it is, and unfortunately no sign, or maybe fortunately, depending on one's view, no sign of bursting, people are going to get hit potentially even harder than they did last time. And it's likely going to be the people that can least afford to be hit. Not to mention the sheer number of people that are relying on government support right now. And the pandemic, unfortunately, still around, although hopefully on its way out. I am uneasy about raising taxes if it's not absolutely necessary. But that's all.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Lattiser.
Thank you, Mr. President. From a conceptual point of view, I don't necessarily disagree with Councilman Ricks's proposal, or necessarily disagree with his reasoning for increasing the OPEB contribution if we're going to get down that road at all. The issues here are, what do you want to do? Do you want to just fund something today with some monies, or do you want to really deal with the problem? You want to really tackle and take on the real problem. And are you ready to do that? And the real problem here is the cost of the pensions, the cost of the healthcare, the cost of the prescription drug caps, the pensions, as was testified earlier, 1/3, 2/3 contribution, 2/3 taxpayers, 1/3 employees. Healthcare, 17 to 20%. I don't know of any other company in the private sector that has such a low cost of contributions towards healthcare. Prescription drug cap, 600 cap on a single, and I think it's 300 on a single and 600 on a family. That's not sustainable. Free healthcare to retirees is a huge event. We heard it testified to the other night. That's over $10 million. So if you want to tackle the real issues, those are the issues that you need to tackle. Those are the issues that have got to come before this council, have got to engage in conversation. And that is the major issue that's facing us as a city. Whether anyone likes Mr. Cushman's projections or his numbers.
Councilman, we just got to keep it straight on this, on the amendment itself.
This is on the amendment. The forecast that we heard regarding OPEB trust, regarding where we're going to be with the pensions, which is why we're talking about this OPEB trust, was projected out 10 years ago. And if you look at the projections 10 years ago and look at where they are today, they're pretty well spot on from what we were told 10 years ago. But yet 10 years ago, don't worry about it. Let somebody else take care of it. And I believe that Mayor Picozzi wants to tackle this issue with a contribution to the OPEB trust to at least begin to tackle the issue. I concur with Councilman Ricks in increasing this contribution to the OPEB trust right out of the gate. And I will, when it comes around to me, I will have a proposed amendment to fund that additional contribution. So I have to wait my turn. I believe I'm next up in line to put my amendments up before this honorable body. And at that time, I will propose a funding solution. I cannot support, however, a tax increase. I completely agree with Mayor Picozzi, and I think at least my colleagues that I've heard from, the taxpayers can't handle it. They can't handle a tax increase this year. So for that reason, I would not be able to support this in its current form because it's going to cause a tax increase. But as I said, Mr. President, when I'm allowed to make my amendments, I will propose a funding source through 2 amendments for increasing the OPEB trust contribution to $1 million. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Travis.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. The real issue here is the people that are dealing with problems every day. I see it every day. The people that decide, my constituents anyway, deciding if they're going to pay their mortgage or rent or the food on their tables, or how about the medicine that they need and they're shortcutting the medicine so they can make it last longer. I totally disagree with having tax raises at a time like this. Councilman Sinapi hit it too. I had down the reval is going to hit us on top of everything else. I have constituents that are not working. They never got called back to work. They're trying to find work, and some of them are city workers that haven't been called back. I can't believe we would be even thinking of raising the taxes. I want to commend Mayor Picozzi and Peter Schaefer and Bruce and Lynn and all those people that worked on this budget. The mayor gave a great mission statement, short, sweet, told it how it is, put the cards on the table. Let's go forward, try to make the city better. And we got to work through it all together. But raising taxes, that's almost impossible. I would never support anything about raising taxes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other questions before we give Councilman Ricks the last word, and then we will vote on his amendment? Okay, Councilman Ricks.
Thank you. To briefly respond to Councilman Snappy and Councilwoman Travis, I do not lightly suggest raising taxes. I suggest raising taxes as certainly a last resort, a necessity, because inflation goes up, the city's costs go up. We can't keep the city's, not just the city's costs in terms of goods and commodities, but in terms of health care, in terms of employees who retire and we have contractual obligations. It is just unsustainable to level fund indefinitely. And here we're looking at 2 years in a row of a proposed 0%. And that's not to mention that we can't level fund the schools in perpetuity either. I want to see the schools be funded so that they can offer additional programs. But to get back to more strictly on, well, in terms of taxes and the reval in particular, as I see it, with the reval is going to be net neutral to the city. I think that all of us on the city council know it, but there's a lot of members of the public who don't know exactly how the reval works. And when last time around, a lot of people who are working class, who are retired, who have modest houses with modest valuations, those valuations went up significantly, and they were the ones who were really hurting because of that reval. Not because the city council raised taxes that year, but because
again, Councilman, the amendment has been moved and passed. We talked about it. We have your position.
Thank you. What I'll do is I'll withdraw my amendment, because my motion, because I am curious in Councilman Lattiser's similar motion, which he intends to pay for in an alternative fashion. So I will withdraw my motion in order to hear his.
Okay. do we need to make a vote or anything on that, Mr. Conley?
The person, and I'm sorry, I don't recall who made the second, but the second will also need to withdraw the second.
Councilman
I made
Lattiser?
Yes, sir. I made the second. I'll withdraw.
Okay. Councilman Ricks, you still have the floor if you'd like to make any other amendments at this time.
I yield. Thank you.
Okay. Councilman Lattiser.
Thank you, Mr. President. So my first amendment would be line item 35-111, which is fire 2 overtime. I am looking to reduce that amount by $2 million. And once we get a second, hopefully get a second, I will explain why and where I would reappropriate it.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a second to Councilman Lattiser's motion? Second by Councilman Ricks. Councilman
For
Lattiser.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, I mean, we've had this conversation time and time again. We have, those of us that have been on the council for a fair amount of years, we have come to these budget hearings year after year after year and have repeatedly heard the same comments from the fire department regarding overtime. And that is, give us the people, give us the staff, and we will have a significant reduction in overtime. We will be able to keep our commitment to overtime, which back in 2016, I think it was, as an example, it was 800,000, and it didn't come in anywhere near that. I have seen where the fire department was provided with a full complement in 8 floaters, and that did not stop the out of control overtime. It just continued. So in 2016, there were 214 uniformed firefighters. The budget was 900,000. It came in at 1,369,615. And that at the time was, if not the full complement, a very near full complement. In 2017, there were 224 firefighters. The overtime was 940,000 budgeted. It came in at 1,218,000. In 2018, there were 216 firefighters. The budget was 500,000. It came in at 1,575,990. In 2019, there were 192. The budget was 1,000,002. It came in at 3,538,287. In 2020, there was 185. The budget was 3.9, and it came in at 4.8. And this year, with 179 firefighters, the budget was 4.4 million, and it came in at 5,739,000. So, as I see it, no matter what we award or approve regarding staffing on the fire department, it doesn't make any difference. The overtime does not come down. The overtime doesn't even come in on budget, let alone under budget. And with that said, I'm proposing on reducing it to $2 million, or by $2 million, to bring it to, I believe it's 2.2 million. And if we look at your year 2018, 2019, particularly the 2018, because we had 216 firefighters at the time, it had a budget of an overtime of 1,575,000. So with a full staff of firefighters, with the proposed floaters that the department has requested, and the management that is responsible to maintain the budgets and to control the overtime costs with a full complement, that should be attainable. What I'm proposing to do with the 2 million is to send 750,000 to the Opeb line item of 75-196, which would increase the Opeb contribution to $1 million. That would fund the Opeb contribution with $1 million and would not raise taxes at all. With the 1.25 remaining dollars out of that amendment, I would propose to apply it to line item 100-03690, which is reducing the drawdown on the rainy day account. That's what that account is. And that's found on page 62 in our budget book.
Thank you, Councilman. Do you want to make it one motion, all of these in one motion? Because they all affect each other? It's up to you how you like to proceed on that.
Sure, because the end result is the first motion is going to affect or not affect the rest. So that's fine. So I would pile them into one motion. The motion is to reduce 35-111 by $2 million, move 750,000 in support of Mayor Picozzi's request to fund the OPEB. That would be line item 75-196, bringing it to $1 million. And the remainder of 1.25 million going into line item 100-03690, which would reduce our drawdown on the drawdown balance from $5,876,468. It would reduce it by $1,250,000. That is my motion, Mr. President.
Okay, and that was moved and seconded by Councilman Ricks. Any questions on Councilman Lattiser's motions? Councilman Ricks.
Brief comment. I can support this.
Okay, thank you. Very brief. Councilman Sinapi.
So one of my concerns is purposely under budgeting a line item seems like a sure way of having financial issues later in the year. I mean, especially you even had members of the public yesterday, or sorry, 2 days ago, thinking that some of the things we're doing were just budgetary theater. I mean, that's what this functionally is, because that money is going to have to come out inevitably when overtime is necessary. And it's going to come from some item, whether it be the rainy day fund or elsewhere. And it might actually end up being worse because it might come from some department that needs it at the time, just because that's what's available. I don't know. What I do know is that at least with the budget as presented, there's a clear path rather than variables, maybes, and potential problems. And as far as the overtime itself, I mean, with the new firefighters coming in, it's set to go down. Granted, it'll be more towards the next fiscal year. If it doesn't, we'll have a conversation then.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Gephardt.
Thank you, Council President. So while in spirit, I don't disagree with Councilman Lattiser's proposal that we need to rein in overtime spending. We did have the opportunity to have fairly extensive dialogue about what the levers on the reduction of that spending are. And, you know, the dwindling staffing being one of those key levers. Other levers, you know, being the minimum staffing as contracted, one which can't be addressed today, and potential other, you know, policy changes that could be managed within the department. But we heard both from the chief and from the assistant chief that the overtime counter continues to run day in and day out every single day. Today, we just accumulated a bunch more overtime. Tomorrow, we're going to accumulate a bunch more overtime because we simply don't have currently the staffing to avoid it. It's disappointing that it's going to take until spring of next year to reach that full staffing level. But, you know, I think we need to look towards that to just take a significant, almost half of the allocation for overtime, which I believe is calculated based on what's the staffing, how many people do we have, and then what do they earn if they work shifts that they're not otherwise scheduled for, and knowing that we'll be in that position until the spring, so roughly 2/3 or 3/4 of the fiscal year. And if you look at the overtime figure, it does appear to take that last quarter where we are fully staffed and account for it. I specifically made the point that Councilman Sinapi raised to the chief that, you know, the process of budgeting and the process of managing a budget and the process of being the executive over a department is that is your job to hit your budget number. And we all understand that from time to time there are extraordinary circumstances that may have a negative impact on that. I think those, you know, should be discussed at all levels of government. But you know, there's no magic wand here, unfortunately, as much as all of us would love for there to be. And so simply changing the budget number, I think all it will do is force a conversation a year from now where we look across the table and say, hey guys, why did you again exceed your budget by millions of dollars? And the response will be, you didn't give us a reasonable number based on the projections that we had at the time. So I fully agree that it needs to be a team effort to drive this down, but I do think we understand what the path is. I respect the history that's been presented, by various testimony throughout this process that, you know, there have been other times when there has been full staffing and we haven't seen the same kind of reduction that we have. I don't believe the current chief presided over any of those times. I may be wrong on that. But, you know, I'm willing to go along with the plan of properly staffing the department and seeing the reduction. We know that on the other side of that, there's going to be added costs in salary and all the other fringe benefits that come with staffing those positions. So it's not a net, it's not a net zero. It's a shifting, but there are, other benefits to having a properly staffed department in terms of safety and retention and morale and all those sorts of things. So, I would just say that I'm not going to support this. I feel that it artificially is going to
move money from here to there, but it's going to end up coming back out of the rainy day fund or some other place when we eventually exceed that. And I think the administration has carefully prepared a budget. They're prepared to execute on that budget starting in about a month. And I'd like to give the opportunity for them to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other members of the council that haven't had a chance to speak yet? Would you like to speak on this amendment? Okay, we're going to go with Councilman Ricks, and then Councilman Lattiser gets the last word on his amendment. Councilman Ricks.
I'll try to make this brief. And forgive me for using a metaphor, because frankly, I'm willing to get voted off the island. So I'm not sure if everybody here used to watch Survivor. There was a character, well, contestant, Rupert, and he had made a suggestion to the other folks on the show. Hey, we've got these green bananas, we're hungry, but we keep eating the green bananas before they turn yellow. Well, lo and behold, people didn't like his suggestion. They wanted to eat now. The way that we're going with not funding OPEB, just paying for it out of the operating budget every year, we're going to be in a position where we're getting very hungry for money. We're not going to have that money, and we are going to be starving and eating those green bananas before they're turning yellow. And it's going to be painful to the taxpayers, because what's going to happen is we're going to see very high tax increases unless we get serious about funding this. And then what position are we going to be left in? In the future, we're not going to have a choice. Now, we can make a statement and we can shape our own future so that we're not in that position. And it's not just about doing things right by the city and the taxpayers, which is the number one, is making sure that we're not inflicting that pain in the future, but also making sure that we're honoring these commitments, setting ourselves up for the right track. And I know that that's not popular, to have to make hard decisions now that can be put off for later, but I feel it's the right thing to do. And so that's why I support this idea. I will say that in terms of the funding mechanism, as Councilman Gephardt suggested, yes, this is a matter of shifting around money, but ultimately it's about making our priorities clear, that we have to be thinking about the future here. I say that funding the OPEB at $1 million is making that statement. And by putting our foot forward and making that sort of commitment here as a city council, we are starting that conversation. We are putting out the olive branch, and then major changes can happen. Ultimately, how money is actually spent in the budget, the mayor does not need to come back to us to change priorities from one line item to another. Budgetary transfers of line items can be done by the administration at their will. So by setting the OPEB trust fund at $1 million, we here tonight are not even guaranteeing that that will necessarily happen. We are expressing an opinion that this is what should happen. And ultimately, these OPEB accounts are not going to, from my understanding, be opened until those new firefighters are hired, which will be well into the fiscal year. So there is time for the administration, plenty of time for the administration to figure this out. And so what this would do is it would be expressing the council's will. Whether the administration ultimately does that is up to the administration. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Lattiser.
Thank you, President. So I look at it obviously differently than some other folks. I do not look at it as purposely underfunding this particular overtime item. I look at it as responsibly funding it. And over the years, I believe I have had 3 maybe 4 fire chiefs come before the council with the promises of give us the firefighters and we'll hold the line on the overtime. Give us the firefighters, we'll reduce the overtime. I can remember one particular meeting when the fire chief was before us, that at the time Councilman Solomon was on the city council. He directly asked the chief at the time, if we provide you with the staff and the floaters, can you guarantee you will come in on an overtime budget? And the answer was absolutely. Well, it didn't. It didn't come in on budget. As a matter of fact, it came in excess of $500,000 over budget. And perhaps it might have even been higher. I don't remember the number specifically. So you can continue to fund overtime, and until overtime is controlled, until it is responsibly computed and handled, you're going to have overtime runs. And I'm fairly comfortable in saying next year, we're going to sit here and we're going to discuss this same item and let's see where the numbers are. I have not seen in the 9 budgets that I've been here, I have not seen the fire department come in on budget. I don't see these overtime problems with the police department. So until such time as management gets control on the overtime, I don't see it reducing. Doesn't matter how many staff people you put in that position. That's all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Councilman. So the clerk will call the roll on favorable action on Councilman Lattiser's amendment.
Mr. McAllister,
No.
Mr. Foley,
No.
Mr. Gephardt,
No.
Mr. Howe,
No.
Mr. Lattiser,
Yes.
Mr. McElroy,
No.
Mr. Ricks,
Yes.
Mr. Sinapi,
No.
Ms. Travis.
No.
2 yes, 7 no. Amendment fails.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councilman Lattiser, you have the
Um,
floor still, if you like to
Mr.
make
President,
any more.
Those are the amendments that I had.
Okay. Any other council people would like to make amendments on the city budget this evening? Any other council people looking to make any other amendments that haven't had a chance to speak yet? Okay, Councilman Ricks.
Oh, if no one else is going to make a motion on the school committee's request, the school department's request, that is, for the $500,000 for the programs that they had discussed in their presentation. And keeping in mind that I, of course, understand that.
Yeah, but let's just move it first.
Oh,
So
sure.
you're making a motion. Go ahead, Councilman, make the motion.
So I would move to add $500,000 to the school department budget.
Okay, do we have a second to Councilman Ricks's motion? Second by Councilman
I'll
Lattiser.
second for discussion, Mr. President.
Okay, second for discussion. Go ahead, Councilman Ricks.
Thank you. And so for this particular amendment, because I can understand how some of our colleagues may differ on exactly how we may be able to fund this $500,000, this amendment itself is not going to include exactly the method of funding it, but rather that would be something that we may discuss and have as a separate amendment. I feel that the school department's request for the $500,000 above being level funded is very reasonable. I feel that the presentation that they gave, where they outlined how these funds would be spent, I think that those career training programs are very effective and excellent use of money. And for that matter, I think that these programs, if they do not succeed in effectively paying for themselves by keeping students in our district and otherwise drawing students to our district, for that matter, as we had seen in the school department's presentation, approximately $6 million is leaving our district every year due to pathways programs, charter schools, and the like, where students feel that they are not being offered the types of programs that they want to see. So I think that the addition of these programs is going to be effective in keeping these students in our district, keeping that approximately $22,000 per student here in Warwick schools, instead of seeing that money head out the door, attract new students to Warwick. Now, even if it doesn't pay for itself, it will certainly make a dent in that $500,000. It will also serve as something of a pilot to see whether money put back into this way, if it is going to be an effective return on investment. But more than that, schools aren't just about a return on investment. It's about the next generation. And so even if this $500,000 doesn't pay for itself, which it may, I would say that for the purpose of providing these excellent programs to our students, the children of families here in Warwick, I say it's well worth it. And for those reasons, I move to increase the school department budget by $500,000.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Foley.
Most of you know my background, 40 years in the classroom, 30 years at Davies Career Tech. Numerous times I was down at the State House fighting for career tech education. I know the value of it. I am not in favor of the additional money at this time. If at mid-year in January they need a supplemental budget, I would be more than happy to step up to the plate. I just wonder why there's a need at this time for that money when everything I'm reading in the paper, reading Councilman Snappy's synopsis of the school board meetings, we're laying off 30 to 40 teachers. There has to be a budgetary saving there, but yet we're level funding. So I think what the school board and the school committee needs to do is reallocate funds within their own budget, and last minute coming to the city, to the mayor's office, and to the school board to ask for those funds, it just isn't prudent in my mind, and I will not be supporting the amendment.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Sinapi.
One of my biggest problems with this is that it would increase the maintenance of effort at a time when even the school committee has been forced, at least some of them, if not all of them, has been forced to acknowledge that it's actually possible right now to decrease the maintenance of effort for them, given the current situation. I believe their attorney might have confirmed it during a meeting as well. And the more recent report that was done up by the auditors, where there was similar conclusions. I mean, and that's not to, it sounds like it's the school committee's getting bashed there, but in all reality, they inherited a decades-long problem. And the good news is they're fixing it. A lot of the expenditures this time around will be continuing to fix the mistakes of the past and not just fix things, but make new things. So I think they are making plenty of headway. I think they're doing a great job. I think they're going to continue to do so. And I think Councilman Foley makes a good point as far as a supplemental budget option, because if those that recall, we actually had that, we had a supplemental bill docketed since last budget for them when this exact sort of issue came up. We said, look, you know what, if you do need more, we'll have it. And guess what? They ended up not coming to us to have us use that for whatever reason. I mean, it's their prerogative. But my point is having that there for them doesn't hurt, and at least it gives the option. But after going through everything and reviewing all their finances, I don't think this is prudent at this time, and their outgoing superintendent at least agreed in that regard.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Gephardt.
I would echo what Councilman Sinapi said in that, I think the school administration, including the new administration, the school committee, everyone's working together to make the schools better, to improve where we are right now. The school department has already, without the addition of with these new programs, has an ambitious slate in front of them of priorities for the year, which they lay out in their budget document. And further, there is all this addition of after school and sort of catch up efforts based on what was missed this past year. And so I think when the school department, if they look at what they have for a task in front of them for this coming year, they have an ambitious and a very challenging job to do to get our students who missed, at least one day a week since we've been back from the classroom, in addition to, multiple weeks and months where they were not in the classroom at all. And that should be the focus for this year. And as I expressed when we met with them, this was taken slightly out of context, but my urging to them was that they should spend the summer and the rest of the spring trying to recruit back 25 students, which will immediately put $500,000 into their coffers, which they can use as they see fit. So for that reason, I would say the school department should continue with what they have. They should make efforts to bring students back into the classroom with the initiatives they already have planned. And we can revisit once there's a more sort of fleshed out plan for how we roll out these new programs, how they will be implemented, and how we will recruit and attract students to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Lattiser.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I also will not be able to support this. I feel strongly that if the administration wanted this in their budget or felt the need to have it in their budget, they would have put it in their budget. And to have the school committee on a vote of 3-2 in the 11th hour throw in another $500,000 for what was said to us at the first budget hearing meeting to develop new programs, and then not to hear any testimony about new programs, but about existing programs. And I also had asked, and I'm going to read it to you, I had asked to be able to ask the two members of the school committee why they voted no, and I wasn't allowed to do that. The following morning, I did receive an email from Mr. Tester, and he has given me permission to read the reasoning or one of the reasons why he voted no. And I quote, "In my view, the way the budgeting process works is that if the administration wanted those things in the budget, then they should have built them in the budget in the first place." And he also goes on to identify that it was stated on the record that the 500,000 would be used to develop new programs. And that's not what we heard. So I will not be able to support this. I feel that the 6% that remains for operating the day-to-day functions, programs, and activities of the school department is a very significant challenge, but that isn't anything that we here on the city council are going to be able to fix. So I will not be able to support any additional funds to the school department other than what the mayor has already added in to his budget to support them. And I would again point out, as I did the other night, by their own admission, they're down 400 students at $22,000 per student for a slamming total of 8.8 million. That's a huge, huge number. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other council members would like to speak about this? If not, we will give Councilman Ricks the last word on his amendment. Councilman Ricks.
Thank you. Based on the feedback from my colleagues, perhaps I had a different takeaway from the presentation by the school department the other evening and by some of the comments at that time. However, it appears that some of my colleagues have received some additional information that I may not have gotten the memo, so to speak, between the presentation and this particular evening, which is fine, and that's why there's 9 of us. So based on the additional information presented, I will withdraw my motion.
Okay, Councilman Lattiser, as you second that, would you withdraw your second?
Yes, sir. I'll withdraw the second.
Okay, Councilman Ricks, you still have the floor.
Thank you. Let's see, as I had mentioned the other evening, approximately 9 days ago now, I sent an email with some questions to the finance director. Unfortunately, I did not receive a written response, but as mentioned a couple of days ago, I do have some some questions relative to the budget. And so I understand from our council solicitor that this is the time to make amendments, and therefore in order to discuss these questions, I would move to decrease the city's projected tax collection rate from its current 99.0% to 98.5%. This is for the purpose of discussing the city's projected revenue.
Okay, Councilman, can you just give us those numbers one more time? Decrease the tax rate from collection rate?
From the current projected 99.0% to the amendment would be to substitute that with a projection of 98.5%.
Okay, do we have a second to Councilman Ricks's amendment? Do we have a second from Councilman Ricks's amendment?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Second by Councilman Gephardt. Councilman Ricks.
Thank you. So my questions, and this would be directed to the finance director, would be, and again, these questions were presented earlier in writing. My first question would be, what has the tax collection rate been for fiscal years 2019, 2020, and how's it looking for the current fiscal year 2021?
Well, first of all, I apologize. You just resent the email. I did not see it on May 18th, but you seem to have that date as the date you sent it. But let me do the best I can to respond verbally.
Thank you, and my apologies if there was any miscommunication there. I understand that it is budget season, and I appreciate you taking a look at this.
But I would say that in the current year, we've been surprised that we're definitely going to make our estimate, the 99% collection rate. And part of the reason that the collector and assessor tell me that this is happening is because there's been so much refinancing going on. And people can't refinance unless they're current on their taxes. So that they believe that's the reason that we're ahead. We are in the tax sale process right now, so that we've executed it, the whole tax sale process. So in the current year, collections have been, will meet that 99% threshold. I've just seen your message, and I'm happy to respond to you tomorrow on going back further in history. I'm just not prepared with all the information in front of me to give you the answer to some earlier years.
Well, thank you. My next question would be that with the tax sales that are in progress, so this is item 2 on that email, how much money is, well, perhaps that's not something that you would have right in front of you, but kind of skipping ahead on that. When it comes to the tax sales, that are currently up, would that money be anticipated to come in for fiscal year 2021 or be realized for fiscal year 2022?
That's next week.
Fiscal year 21, and I can't remember the date right now.
It's June 2nd or 4th.
Yeah, it's early June sometime. So yes, fiscal year 21.
And let's see. Okay. And then going ahead to the third of the 4 questions. This is in relation to, and this was alluded to in the mayor's general statement at the beginning of the budget, that we have loss on the tangible property revenue, such as, in large part, the Hertz fleet selling of 500 cars. I'm not sure if we have any information on whether it appears that we're going to see Hertz or other large parts of that commercial tax base rebuilding so that we recover more of that type of revenue in 2022 as opposed to 21?
This would all be fiscal year 22, both the motor vehicle estimate, and our budget is based upon $920,000 in American Rescue revenues, and it's all related to the loss of vehicle count. And it's not only rental fleets. We believe that the other part of the problem is that the DMV really shut down for a while after the pandemic began, and people were not required to re-register their cars. And if you don't re-register your car, it doesn't go on our tax roll because it's not on the data that the assessor receives for purposes of levying a tax. So we see a reduction in fleet. We see vehicles that were not registered because of the pandemic. And that's our basis of the 920,000 lost, even though the value of motor vehicles is up substantially. The native values are up substantially in terms of used cars, but we know that our count is down. And secondly, the tangible property tax, this is the tax assessor's, the $500,000 figure, his best estimate as to businesses that have closed and didn't file a record of tangible property.
And then my fourth question on that would be that I do see that the drop in the rate, I assume that that's set by the General Assembly from the drop of $34.60 per thousand to $30 per thousand. And let's see. I suppose my questions in relation to that are we basically out that money of that $4.60 as, I believe that that's what I had kind of seen referenced in the budget, or alternatively, does it appear that the General Assembly is going to make up for that through some sort of revenue sharing or other program?
If you look at page 59 of the budget, there's a state reimbursement code 100-03319, state reimbursement with motor vehicle tax phase out. We're estimating $13,018,239. And that's a reimbursement both for a number of factors. The biggest one this year being the reduction in the rate as required by state law from $34.60 down to $30. But also they're reducing the percentage of assessed value that they apply for purposes of setting the value. And third component is the exemption per vehicle has increased, I think, from $4,000 to $5,000. So the first $5,000 of, if you have a $15,000 car, the first $5,000 will not be taxed. It'll only be taxed on $10,000. So they're reimbursing us for those three different factors.
Okay, this makes sense because that's the sort of thing that when I flip to the very last page, page 64, that's something that that reimbursement would not be reflected on page 64. That would be separate. So I appreciate that explanation on basically where that revenue that's apparently being lost, as I was seeing on page 64, is being made up for by the state in that regard. So it's not as not the same hit as it would be if I was just looking at page 64 in isolation.
Absolutely. And again, I apologize. I try to be responsive. I'll have to look at my spam folder when I get in because I did not see that communication. I only saw the communication just now.
I understand it's, it is the budget season after all. So I appreciate you answering the questions at this time.
Thank you. Councilman Lattice, sir.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Peter, don't feel bad. I can assure you I've ended up in the spam files more than once. Don't worry about that. But being that we're having conversation regarding revenue, I do have a couple of questions for Peter on that same topic. So,
is this on the amendment? It'll affect the amendment?
Yeah, it very well could. So I'm asking about what the change is then regarding state aid for last year versus what it is this year. That's for Peter.
Well, if you look at page 59, the first part of the budget, the first block at the top of that page deals with state aid. Now, it's a complicated comparison this year because what the state did in fiscal year 21 was that it replaced a number of components of state aid with CARES Act funding. And so, for example, it looks like if you look at 100-03319, it looks like we're going from 2.6 million up to 13 million in state motor vehicle aid reimbursements. But what in fact the state did, and if you look in the second block, what the state did is it replaced, to deal with their financial problems, they used CARES Act money to replace the state aid. So you'll see a figure 100-3316 of 8,474,740 in the current year. And that's federal aid that was used to replace state aid. So there is definitely an increase in state aid in our resources from the state or by federal resources that the state used to replace state aid.
So the swing, Peter, just looking at these numbers quickly, the swing would be a positive to us of about 7 million. Is that correct? We're down 14 million in the state aid. And, I'm sorry, we're up 14 million proposed in state aid. We're down roughly 7 million in federal. So the swing for us is about a positive 7 million.
That's correct. You need to add at least the 5,077,000, excuse me, at least the 8,474,000 to the 45,345,000 to get to the base, which get you to just under 54 million, and we're increasing to 59,755. Did I do that right, Lynn?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, I think that's it on this item for now, Mr. President. As I had asked earlier, I would like to reserve the right to ask a couple of more questions before we actually vote on the budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak on Councilman Ricks's amendment? Okay, Councilman Ricks, you have the final word.
Thank you. Well, this is going to seem familiar. Based on the information that we heard from the finance director, and again, I primarily used this as a vehicle to be able to discuss with the finance director in this open meeting the revenue questions. Based on the information that the director has provided, he is confident in the 99% collection rate. Based on the data that he has presented, I see no particular reason to doubt his assessment that a 99% tax collection rate may well happen in fiscal year 22 to the best of our predictive abilities. Therefore, I will withdraw the motion.
A motion is withdrawn. I believe that was Councilman Gephardt who seconded it. Would you like to withdraw your second?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, so the motion is withdrawn. Any other amendments to the budget this evening from members of the council? Any other amendments to be offered to the budget this evening? Okay, hearing none. The first step here is, so there has been no change to the bottom line of the budget. So PCR 7521 has been moved favorable, but however, it was amended. So we will need to vote now. We're going to vote now for favorable action on PCR 75-21 as amended. We have moved. It has been seconded. So the clerk will call the roll for favorable action as amended.
Mr. McAllister,
Yes.
Mr. Foley,
Yes.
Mr. Gephardt,
Yes.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser,
Yes.
Mr. McElroy,
Yes.
Mr. Ricks.
A quick point of order. Are we going to have closing statements?
Yes, we're still going to have to vote. If it gets passed as amended, we still have to move it one more time.
Sorry, thank you. My vote is yes.
Mr. Sinapi,
Yes.
Ms.
Yes.
Travis. Not yes to amend.
Okay, the amendment has passed. So at this time before us, well, first I'm going to ask if we move, do we have a motion to move favorable as amended?
Move favorable as amended.
Second by Councilwoman Travis, Councilman Foley. Okay, so now it has been moved. I have a few comments on the budget as a whole, and then I will ask my colleagues as well. So I'm very pleased with the budget that is put before us. Right at the start, when I met with the mayor, we had a similar goal of a no tax increase budget. This has been a very tough year for our residents of Warwick. Unlike any other time. Everybody knows what we're talking about. So I just want to highlight a few things that this council and the mayor's office has worked together on that is included in this budget. Big time investments in equipment and vehicles through the lease purchases that this council has worked with the mayor's office to get done. I know members of this council have been working on this for years. We are going to now see scheduled in the budget new vehicles for the fire department, for the police department, for the library, for DPW. These will provide direct services to our residents. Also, as part of this budget that this council has worked on together to get included in this budget is investments in our infrastructure. We are using American Rescue Act funds to make huge, much needed upgrades to our sewer and water infrastructure. And I thank the mayor for including that in the budget. And I thank my colleagues on the councils for advocating for that and supporting this. Again, this is a direct service to the residents of Warwick. This council has worked on a program called the Roadworks program, where we took advantage of historically low interest rates and through the infrastructure bank to do some bonding for our paving programs. Just a few years ago, the asphalt budget line item was $4 million. But because of this new program taking advantage of the infrastructure bank and these low interest rates, we were able to reduce that line item to $200,000 in this budget. But we're seeing more and more roads being paved. Again, a direct benefit to our residents. I spoke with the mayor again this morning about this, how not only are we paving roads, but doing infrastructure upgrades. We are going to coordinate with National Grid with the upgrades. So we're going to pave them once and pave them great, and we're going to coordinate. And when we're combining with National Grid, we're going to be able to pay for pennies on the dollar, and more roads are going to be paved because of the work that this council and this administration have done together as part of this budget. So these are just some of the critical long-term investments that are included in this budget. Again, the credit goes to the administration, the credit goes to the members of this council for working together, not just these past 2 nights, not just in the past, but for a number of years, and especially this past year, working together. And I do have to give a thank you to our congressional delegation as well for voting and bringing in the much needed rescue funds, which allows a lot of this. I believe that one of the reasons they voted for this is for cities and towns like Warwick to be able to give a break to their residents with a no tax increase budget. So I want to again thank the council for their hard work this past year and working with this administration, working with his departments. We have a lot of really good long-term investments in this budget that are reflected in this budget. And these are direct services to our residents of Warwick. And that's why I'll be supporting this evening. So at this time, are there any comments members of the council would like to make on the budget as a whole? And I will have Solicitor Conley will just go over exactly what we can do at this part of the meeting, please.
So, Mr. President, so you have before you now the motion for the budget as a whole. So each member of the council can have an opportunity to express their position in support of their vote and their position on any particular aspects of the budget, and then it will go to a roll call vote.
Thank you, Mr. Conley. Councilman Lattiser.
Thank you, Mr. President. So let me begin by saying I concur with the comments from the council president. I think he spoke well to the issues of what's been happening. I'd like to expand on it a little bit more. Keep in mind that these happenings that the council president, I thought very well described, have happened in over a very, very brief 5 months. The miles of movement that we have seen within the city have been not only refreshing, but I find very exciting. The cooperation between the administration, the staff, the motivation, the excitement that I see in all of the staff and the city workers that we come in contact with, the positive energies that have been created in a very short period of time, 5 months, the enthusiasm, the motivation in a very brief period of time, the energies that I see from all of our members, I should say staff, our employees in the city, is so upbeat. We are really in a much different place than some time ago. And this all has occurred in a very brief period of time. I don't agree with everything in this budget. There are some things, as you heard earlier, that I do not support, but I realized throughout my career that you can't always get everything you want. And I try to apply what I call the 85% rule to how I make my decisions and how I rate success. And I rate success of myself with that 85% rule. If I can get 85% of what I want done, I'm happy. If I can get 85% of what I don't want stopped, I'm happy. And the in between that's part of doing business. It's all part of doing business. We're not going to have everything. But in the grand scheme of things, and as it's related to this budget, as it's related to where we are today as a city, and where our direction is heading, I think that we are heading, I believe we are heading in a very positive direction, and we're heading there strongly. And there's much even better things coming in the horizon. Wait till we move into the Sawtooth building. I think the energies that we are going to experience from the staff that works for this city every single day, I think is going to be incredible. The increased productivity that we are going to gain by a homogeneous relationship within the same building, everybody working in the same building, almost. The mayor still holds the corner office, and I don't blame him. I wouldn't give that up either. It is really exciting. I do feel that we do have our share of challenges ahead of us. And I think as a member of this city council, I certainly intend to continue conducting business exactly as I've been doing it over the last going on 9 years. I think as the legislative branch of government, as well as the administration, I think that we all need to really keep our thumb on the pulse. And especially important is we need to make those difficult decisions and have those very difficult discussions, not because they're fun, but because they need to be had. I look forward to working with all of my colleagues over the remainder of this fiscal year into the next fiscal year. I look forward to our discussions. I do look forward to our disagreements, and we know we will have those. But in the spirit of things, that's what we're about. We're supposed to have disagreements. We're supposed to get angry. We're supposed to bang our fist on the table occasionally. But at the end of the day, it's all about what's right and what's in the best interest, in my opinion, for the people, and I'm sure you all feel the same, for the people that we represent. And I, for one, will continue to apply the 85% rule. We get it right 85% of the time. I think that's golden. Every now and again, we're going to make a mistake. We're going to make a hiccup. But I'm in full confidence that working together, the administration, the executive branch, and the city council, that we are going to keep our thumb on the pulse, and we are going to continue to move this city of Warwick forward. People will want to stay, and even more importantly, people will want to come back. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Councilman Lattiser. Councilman Ricks.
Thank you. You know, it's a little bit ironic. I completely agree with the council president and with Councilman Lattiser. I completely echo what they are saying, that we have this city council that's working together with the administration, that so many great things are happening in Warwick now. We have the ability, according to the finance director and the administration, to have a 0% tax increase, which is a wonderful thing for our residents, Warwick businesses, most importantly, for all those folks who are struggling to pay their taxes, struggling to put food on the table, that whether they're seniors or otherwise on fixed incomes, whether they are people who are struggling during this pandemic with employment. There are a lot of things to love in this budget. The reinvestments in our city to make sure that we are providing the services that we need to be providing to residents. And unfortunately, a big priority here for me is making sure that we are on the right track in the long term. We are not here tonight going to solve our long-term problems. That's not something that's simply solved with one vote at the budget. That's something that's going to have to be tackled day in, day out, in phone calls, in emails, in meetings, and of course, future council meetings where it's all going to culminate in real change, where we tackle these long-term financial issues so that, as I had referenced earlier, if folks remember that show Survivor, I think it's still on, but that phrase that for whatever reason it sticks out to me, where one of the recurring contestants from that show, Rupert, would make his statement about, let's not eat these green bananas. You don't want to eat the green banana. It doesn't taste as good as the yellow banana. We want to wait for that yellow banana. We want to wait for it to ripen. And you know what? If we're eating too many green bananas now, well, we're not going to have anything in the future. This isn't a problem that's going to come to us in fiscal year 22 or 23, but when this shows up, if it's 10 years, 15 years, or 20 years from now, I know that I'm going to be in Warwick. Warwick is where I want to not only live and work, it's where I'm going to be raising a family. I'm here for the long haul. And I don't want to be looking back 10 years, 20 years from now and saying, what was I doing back then? I wasn't raising my voice on these concerns, making sure that the city is getting on the right track to tackle these problems. Here, one member of the city council cannot dictate what a majority does. And that's one of the great things about this city council. Each of the 9 of us, we have our voice. And at this budget hearing, even though there are so many great things that this budget does, my biggest concern right now in this moment is making sure that we are on the right track in the long term. And I don't think that $250,000 into that Opeb trust is sending that message that we are making that commitment to fund our long-term, not just long-term obligations, if we want to put it that way, but honoring our commitments to these contracts that the city has entered into, making that statement loud and clear that yes, we are going to make sacrifices to make sure that we are honoring our contracts, our commitments to our employees. Now, absolutely, we are going to do that. Let there be no doubt that this council is going to do that. I just want to raise my voice to make that message loud and clear, because I heard criticism, and understandably so, I understand where it's coming from, that I voted against the contract for the firefighters. And my primary reason for my vote was that I was concerned that not enough was being done to make sure that the city is entering into contracts that it can sustainably fund, making sure that we can fulfill the promises that we are making. And so my vote that evening was a statement that we need to make certain that the city is only entering into contracts where we are making sure that we can honor the promises that we are making. And similarly, my vote tonight, the reason I am going to vote no is because I want to make sure that I am similarly making a strong statement that our budget, our priorities, and these are all items that we can work on throughout the course of the year. A budget is not just a vote one evening. It's, as some of my colleagues have said, it's matters that come up at every single council meeting. And so for those reasons, and also for one other reason, is that as many of my colleagues have stated, it is important to make sure that our residents, our constituents, the homeowners and taxpayers, and for that matter, the renters, who these taxes ultimately affect as well, just as much as the homeowners, it affects the people who are renting, that we do what we can to make things easier during these incredibly difficult times. And on that, I will say that I believe that even more than a 0% tax increase, I believe that the very best solution to it, to helping folks in these difficult times, is targeted tax relief, such as that which I hope that we can discuss in more detail in the upcoming Tax Relief Commission meetings. That's something where, of course, we will be working with the administration to accomplish those sorts of goals to the best of our abilities. So for those reasons, specifically because I want to make sure to emphasize that we will be getting on that track to make sure that our long-term obligations, our promises to our employees, that those promises are kept. That's the reason why the budget, as it is laid out, I feel that a $1 million contribution to OPEB would make a strong statement in that regard. And I hope that my no vote on this budget will make a similar statement, as well as to my commitment to making sure that we will work together. And I'm certainly looking forward to working together with all of my colleagues and the administration to make sure that we are getting on that right track and keeping all of our promises under the contracts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Ricks. Councilman Foley.
Thank you. I don't usually speak long, and I won't do that tonight either. But first of all, as one of the two new members on the council, I want to thank the mayor and tell him the appreciation I have. When I call, the phone gets answered or the message or gets returned quickly, as it does with the council president. And I've enjoyed the last 30 days that we're opening up our society more, because I've seen all of my council member colleagues, and we're able to talk one-on-one and get to know each other and feel each other out. That's important as we go forward. The mayor is new, as I am, and I am going to be voting for this budget. I want to give the mayor the budget he asked for so that he can start off on the right foot and with his vision. He got elected by the entire city of Warwick. We got voted in by our particular wards. And when I walked the ward, people asked me, because they knew I served 20 years ago, why would you want to do this again? I see you laughing, Donna. Why would you ever do this again? And I do it again. Most of you know I taught history. Heritage is important to me. And I did research on my family crest, the Foley name. And believe it or not, the motto for the Foley name is that I may be of service. And that is why I entered the fray again. And I'll tell you right now, the first 5 months have been much nicer, better than they were 20 years ago. The sense of camaraderie among all 9 of us and the mayor's office is light and day different than what it was 20 years ago. I see better days ahead for the city of Warwick. I'm glad to be part of that. I'm glad we're starting it off with a 0 tax increase, because every one of us heard it when we were campaigning in the last year. We needed something. We were getting hit right, left, and center. Well, I hope this is a great first step. One last thing, Councilman Ricks and Councilman Lattiser both mentioned, one was a movie, and Councilman Lattiser mentioned how the 85% rule. And I remember a line from Bull Durham, one of my favorite baseball movies. And Kevin Costner's talking, and he's reminiscing, and he's a minor leaguer, career minor leaguer. And what he says is this: in a course of a baseball season, you get about 500 at bats. You get 25 singles over the course of that year, 25 more hits. You go from a 250 hitter to a Hall of Famer. I hope in this budget, we've gotten more than 25 more hits. I think this budget is a good first step of moving this city forward, and I think you're going to see great things for the city of Warwick. I am more than happy to vote in favor of this budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Foley. Councilman McElroy.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to echo your comments on the preparation of this budget. I also want to personally thank Mayor Picozzi and his entire administration, and especially you, Council President McAllister, for your tireless work on behalf of the residents of the city. The mayor and the council president worked tirelessly and very collaboratively, and I think it is nothing but good work will come of it for the city. I will wholeheartedly support this budget.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Gephardt.
I'll also be exceedingly brief, but being this my first budget, my first term, my first 5 months working with all of you, I appreciate the help and support. I appreciate the way we are all working together, especially with the administration and all the various departments. And like was said before, I think by Councilman Foley, You know, the mayor came in with a lot of new ideas, wanting to make a lot of change, and I think that is incorporated into this budget. You know, the analogy about hitting singles is spot on, because you know, the city's got a long history and it's got a long future, and so we do things piece by piece. We're working in the right direction, and I'm looking forward to working with everyone to do that. So thank you, and I'll be supporting this budget.
Thank you, Councilman Gephardt. Any other council people would you like to speak on this? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll for favorable action on PCR 7521.
Mr. McAllister,
Yes.
Mr. Foley,
Yes.
Mr. Gephardt,
Yes.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser,
Yes.
Mr. McElroy,
Yes.
Mr. Ricks,
No.
Mr. Sinapi,
Yes.
Ms. Travis.
Yes.
8 yes, 1 no. Motion passes.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. The motion passes. Congratulations to the city of Warwick and the administration and the council. But don't go anywhere. We still have one more item this evening. Number 2 on our agenda is PCR 76-21, a resolution adopting and setting the tax rate of the city of Warwick for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2021 and ending June 30th, 2022. For action, Councilman Howe.
Move favorable action on PCR 76-21.
Seconded by Councilwoman Travis, Councilman Foley, Councilman Lattiser, Councilman McElroy, Councilman Gephardt. Mr. Schaefer, would you just like to give us the tax rate here as a result of the budget?
Sorry.
Give us 1 second, please, Mr. President.
Absolutely.
Do you have the transfers?
Yeah, I give them to them too. I give them to them.
You wanted both all classified tax rates?
Mr. President, perhaps we should take a 5-minute recess?
Yes, I think that's a good idea. We'll take a 5-minute recess and then we'll come back in with this motion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know what the sizes are, so. All right. All right, thank you.
Steve, are you there? You lied to me, Phil.
I'm here.
Okay, we're all set, Steve. I apologize.
Okay, no problem. If we could come back into order here. Let me just see everyone's beautiful face. Nice pose, Councilman Howe.
Can I see it?
There it is, nice. Okay, so we are back for recess. So we are discussing item number 2 on the agenda this evening, which is PCR 7621. To the mayor or Mr. Schaefer?
You'd like me to reiterate the tax rates that are proposed in the budget, which is $18.73 per thousand of valuation for residential property, $28.10 per thousand of assessed valuation for commercial industrial property, and $37.46 per thousand of assessed valuation for tangible personal property. We also have a rate of $30 per thousand of assessed value for motor vehicles in accordance with state law.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions?
Yes, could you repeat the tangible tax that broke up at the end? $37.40 something.
46 cents, $37.46.
Thank you.
Any additional questions from members of the council? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll for favorable action on PCR 7621.
Mr. McAllister,
Yes.
Mr. Foley,
Yes.
Mr. Gebhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser,
Yes.
Mr. McElroy,
Yes.
Mr. Ricks,
Yes.
Mr. Sinapi,
Yes.
Ms. Travis.
Yes.
9 yes.
Thank you. The motion passes. I'm going to give the mayor the last word, but I want to congratulate again and thank all the city employees, all the residents that joined us, all the residents that contacted us, the members of the council, the legal staff, again, all the department heads that spent hours working on these budgets, and you know, Mr. Schaefer and Lynn and our city clerk. I just want to thank everyone who was involved. So, and congratulations.
And our
So,
council
Mayor, I'm going
liaison.
to give, and the council liaison, Joanne, yes, especially
Thank you.
Joanne. So she
Thank
has the hardest job in the city of Warwick. She has to work for 9 elected officials. So,
Yeah, she has to work for some kind of people.
yeah,
9,
that's right.
toughest job.
So Mayor Picozzi will give you the last word, and then I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. President. You thanked everyone, so I can't do that. I want to thank the city council. I've heard your concerns and I've heard residents' concerns about the future. I share those concerns, but I've only been here a short time. We had to work on this year's budget, which started almost right after we got here. I work with the city council as closely as I can. I hope you know that. I always want to include you in everything. And we probably have the best relationship between mayor and council in the history of this city. And that's the only way we're going to move this city forward. I have a great staff. We have great employees. I see a great future for Warwick beginning now. I just want to thank you all for your support.
Thank you very much, and congratulations on your first budget.
Thank you.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion.
By Councilwoman Travis, second by Councilman Lattiser. Voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? All right, everybody have a great evening, and congratulations.